The Enlightenment era was a period of time which lasted around the 18th century, where many radical changes occurred in human thought and society. It was known to be a transition from the conservative and religious ideologies of the medieval world to a more modernistic and liberal view on society and thought similar to what we see today. We can refer to the Enlightenment as a period where a rejection of traditional ideologies wasn't frowned upon, but rather was embraced and promoted. At the time, the Cultural Revolution valued new ideas and intellectual ingenuity, while the actual Enlightenment period was thought to have originated in the beginning of the 18th century. The movement prospered through the existence of political revolutions, such as the French, English, and American revolutions. The numerous occurrences of wars stemmed from the realization that social status wasn't predetermined. Rather, people turned to the idea that freedom and equality relied heavily on principles of human reason. From a literary standpoint, satire became a common form of literature that appeared during the Enlightenment period. Such is the case with Jonathan Swift's famous book, Gulliver's Travels, which documented the ridiculousness of political and religious doctrines during the 16th to 18th century Europe. The various societies that Gulliver encounters have their own implicated forms of political satire. For example, the occurrence with the Lilliputians poked fun at the people in Britain at the time, arguing that the British regarded themselves too highly in society. The arguments between the Little and Big Endians represented the religious differences between French Protestants and French Catholics at the time. Swift's analysis here speaks directly to how amusing it is for silly disputes between religions to result in full-scheme wars. This relates back to the ideas of the Enlightenment, where society started to value reason over religion. While we usually think of religion as an opposing force to the Enlightenment, it is better to see it as an opposing force to certain aspects of religion, such as the idea of supernatural intervention. For example, even though the Protestant Reformation may have seemed to be a religious faith that envied the Enlightenment, the rise of Protestants helped to develop Enlightenment ideals that questioned the so-called authority of the Church. The most common form of religion during the Enlightenment at the time was known as deism. Deism associates the creation of the universe to the natural light of reason. Deists usually rejected the reality of miracles in favor of human reason. For this reason, deism was meant for a society fixated on scientific achievement, since many scientific scholars often contemplated the intricate nature of space and time to eventually be further understood by human reason. As Enlightenment virtues spread, philosophy became even more popular. John Locke, a philosopher and political theorist, helped build the foundation for the Enlightenment era. In his famous paper, An Essay Concerning Human Understanding, Locke was able to argue that humans were blank pages that needed to be filled up with the years of experience. Jean-Jacques Rousseau was a Geneva-born philosopher that developed many new insights in the field of philosophy during the Enlightenment period. One of his famous works, Emile, relates to Locke's essay concerning human understanding, when talking about the human mind resembling a blank sheet of paper on which impressions are created through experience. Immanuel Kant was a firm believer in the value and importance of human reason when it came to establishing political systems. However, his philosophies did not extend to a self-government. Instead, Kant valued an elective representative system as being capable enough to adequately represent the views of the people. This goes to show you how impactful the Enlightenment really was, as some of the same government practices we have today originated from the philosophy of reason. We can't address the Enlightenment without talking about the scientific revolution that took place. The breakthroughs in science at the time helped to progress the idea that human reason was a valuable necessity. Science proved to be a way that could deal with the ignorance of society, since experimentation was thought to be valued as irrefutable evidence. Isaac Newton's Principia Mathematica helped to explain physical phenomena with the use of mathematical models, inspiring intellectual creativity to prosper throughout Europe. Newton believed that nature was governed by mathematical laws and that human reason had the ability to seek new insights. How we perceive nature changed with the rise in modern science. Many fields of study have their roots from the Enlightenment. To name a few, history, psychology, economics, anthropology, and even sociology. For example, during the Enlightenment period, many new medical schools were being opened for the first time. The University of Edinburgh was one of the premier institutions at the time. What resulted was a number of competent students who were willing to take their practice and share it with others. In the field of natural science, Carl Linnaeus developed a system of classification for plants. Frenchman Georges Buffon wrote a guide for the natural sciences in his book Histoire naturelle, which contained 44 volumes of scientific work. Therefore, we can see that literature at the time was dependent upon reason. The numerous scientific publishings created at the time helped to create an environment that valued scientific thought and reason as a way of life. The Encyclopedia of Denis Diderot and Jean d'Alembert consisted of over 70,000 articles that provided a means to carry on the legacy of human knowledge. Astronomy was a field of study that was heavily impacted by Enlightenment ideals. Ptolemy's idea of the universe was disproved by Galileo, whose motion experiments supported the ideas of Newton's theories on classical mechanics. Despite this, however, Galileo's ideas were in conflict with the Church, which led to his punishment. Enlightenment thinkers saw Galileo as a perfect representation of reason versus conservative ideologies. How exactly did the historical background connect with the literature during this time period? 2 words: independent thought. The power of independent thought cultivated in a society where people deviated from the conservative norm. This allowed people to embrace human reason as a source of political, social, and cultural power. In terms of literature, the Enlightenment helped to spread new ideas through different mediums of writing, whether that be satire, philosophy, or science. All in all, the Enlightenment provided a way to expand upon the natural curiosity found in humans. From its implications in science to art to culture, it's important to realize just how powerful of an impact the Enlightenment has left behind.